Welcome back to the channel, guys. So today, responding to a viewer request, we're going to take a look at a Shiai video. This chap has contacted me before, and a couple of months back you would have seen I'd done a video about how not to lose the kote when you're fighting from Jodan. He was struggling with people just taking his kote off him left, right and center. So in that video we just tackled some approaches to Kihon and Keiko and so on to improve the situation, strengthen his Debana men, and open up some differing strategies and that sort of thing. So I'll link that in the description, that particular video, if you want to watch that afterwards, and it'll be at the end of this video as well. But he's sent in a Shiai video since then, so he's had a Shiai, and he's just preparing for another one, so he's just looking for a bit of feedback. It's important to note I'm not a high level instructor. I'm 4th Dan, kind of knocking on 5th Dan. I've had an attempt at 5th Dan, failed that. So, but it's been a year since then, and I think I'm in the hunt now. So this is more of a peer-to-peer thing, like a friendly Jodan player, one friendly Jodan player to another type thing, okay? So just important to get that out of the way. Our friend is going to be on the right hand side wearing the silver door die, which I think is maybe a club door die, because there's a chap in the background who's got one as well, which is super cool actually. I've not seen many of them about. His opponent is on the left and is quite accomplished from the sounds of things. He was being considered for national squad selection, so obviously quite an experienced Shiaisha. What's interesting about the match is it's Jodan, it's Jodan versus Jodan. So it's quite a rare opportunity to do Mitori Keiko, which is like watching and learning Keiko, with Jodan versus Jodan. Right? We very seldom get to practice against each other, much less face each other in Shiai. Our friend who's asked for the feedback is not long past sundown, so 3rd Dan, and he's got some physical issues that he's dealing with, I believe, in the knees. I think that's right. So you'll notice he takes like Gedan at the beginning of the match, and I think it's one of the reasons why he's adopted Jodan as well. Anyway, so we'll get stuck in, and I'll just pause and like comment and go back as required. Okay, I'm filming this on my mobile phone, so excuse any like audio blips or anything like that. Alright, let's get going. It's quite a nice opening exchange. Right, let's go back here. I just want to talk about the entry into Jodan. If you look at the player on the left versus our friend on the right, player on the left steps up and steps forward into Jodan immediately. Okay, and our friend on the right, when he takes his Jodan, he steps back into Jodan. Okay, there's no rule that says you have to step forward, but I would generally, I would say Jodan is the Kamai of fire, right? It's aggressive, so step forward, right? There's a Shiai sen, which is the lines that you line up on. There's plenty of distance of separation in the interest of fairness. So you can both afford to take that slight step forward, and you should still be at Toma, which is the distance that's where it's like too far to cut. So yeah, something worth considering. It just sends a stronger message to your opponent. You're stepping forward and you're immediately like trying to create semi pressure from there. I want to talk about this opening waza again as well. So it's quite common for a fiery Jodan player to come in and be on the lookout for an attack. So this particular technique you did, which is the Nuki Men, where you kind of hold your ground, maybe step back and control the distance, and they come in and you try to cut down on top of them. This was quite a good idea. It's quite a good strategy, because knowing that it's a fiery Jodan player and they are going to come in and attack, they're probably going to be aggressive, you can pretty much bank on having to go at this technique. But you got to be careful not to overuse this technique, and to make it work, it's got to be at your timing. So if you had stepped up and stepped forward into Jodan, and just kind of made a maybe a bit of a sharp step to trigger him to make that strike, your opponent, you might have felt it was a little easier to have the space and the timing to land your attack perfectly on target. And the Shinpan, the judges, they're looking for that little moment of setup to see that you made the opportunity. So I think one of the reasons why your attack didn't succeed, but it was very close, you could hear the audience kind of all go, ooh. You know, it was very, very, very close to landing, but it didn't quite come off because you were just a little bit late there. And the reason is because he kind of, your opponent comes out of Sonkyo, steps forward, and he's kind of making the timing of the waza, and you're a little bit like reactionary to that. So watch it again, he steps in, and you kind of react to it, but it was really close, like you could have pulled it off. Okay, this is good, like you're really on him, right? A bit of Ayuchi waza, I think you were going for the kote there, so there's a pretty good chance. A similar sort of attack, goes for Hiki Man, but it's not quite there. Goes for the man, but you've got that covered. Okay, interesting point is Chiba Sensei used to talk about the Ayuchi, same time attack, and it's a very common thing for Jodan players. So it's something you have to learn to be comfortable with. So the fact that you're coming forward and engaging and being really proactive, even though you're not really managing to get your attacks off a little earlier, for the reasons I mentioned before, you don't really have that sort of semi-step to dictate the timing. But you're getting these same time attacks off, and what that means is, although you're not getting the Ippon here, neither is he, right? So it's oddly enough, it's a good way to go about things, but the point is that you have to be comfortable with doing these Ayuchi style attacks in Jodan, as opposed to say something like stepping back and blocking and, you know, just trying to be defensive, where the Jodan player could maybe do more of that, right? Because they're kind of, their posture is designed to be kind of like 50-50 defense offense, right? Whereas the Jodan Kamae really relies mostly on offense. So this same time attack, the fact that you're coming out the blocks and rather than kind of being defensive when he goes, you're kind of meeting him head on and being proactive, this is working for you quite well. So let's go back a bit. I wanted to talk about something that happens early on here. I have watched this match before, so there's a couple of points, you know, that I'll pick up early on because it's going to be important later. Okay, I want you to see just after, I think it's a Hiki Men attempt. Right, now watch this block that you sort of do. You do that blocking motion, and then you do it kind of here again, right? Okay, take note of that, because your opponent has taken note of that. Okay, I want to talk about your kamae a bit. See if I can pause it. Okay. If you have a look at this back foot, and just the body alignment in your kamae, there's a couple of things to talk about. I think your weight's a bit too far on your front foot. They say for Jodan it should be about sort of 60% on the front foot, 40% on the back foot. It's a little bit more forward than it would be in Jodan, but only slightly. I think your front foot is too planted. Okay, and the back foot is kind of the telltale. I think your left heel, see here, your left heel is actually very high off the ground. It really only needs to be about the length of a thumb maximum, right? Maybe even from the knuckle to the tip off the ground. And I think you have quite a large gap between your front foot and your back foot. And we'll see that early in the match, so we'll go back to that. But you're really up on your toes on your back foot, and what this means is you've kind of used a little bit of the stretch already of your Achilles tendon in your calf. You've already used that up, so you can't deploy it as part of your strike. The other thing is your knee is kind of bent in and pointing off to the right. Now it's okay to have a bit of a twist and be hanmi, right? A bit of a twisting posture in Jodan. Yeah, you know, it's kind of textbook really. But a lot of modern players favor being a bit more square with their hips, almost as square as Jodan. The advantage of being square is more power, more speed, and that's why they do it. The advantage of being slightly twisted is more reach, right? It favors the katate waza. But what you can do is you can be quite square on for the launch of your attack, and what you should do is have the twist emerge in your shoulders and your torso as part of the strike, so you get the benefit of having the power, the speed at the launch, and the reach as you move through into the attack. So that's something to think about. But with this knee kind of bent, to resolve that, it should be kind of straight but not locked, right? To be able to resolve that, I think you need to bring your back foot closer to your front. Okay. The other thing to look at is your shinai, the grip of it, it's slightly like over your right shoulder, I would say. It's not really blocking the middle of your men like the grip of the shinai should block the middle of your men. It's slightly over to the right hand side. Okay. So let's have another look here. Let's go back. I think it was actually a little bit earlier here. Okay. Back, there. Right. Look at the distance between your back foot and your front foot. Alright? And just to be clear, I'm not saying anything here is like bad. Right? Your kendo's pretty solid. Do you know what I mean? You've got third dan. you know some stuff, right? At least as far as like us in the West, right? Right, but here, like, right where I've paused it here, this is a really good example. Really high heel. The heel's probably turned in a little too much as well, right? Which is also, so you have to like sort of straighten it as you launch before you can go. That turns your footwork into two movements rather than one. So that's something to be aware of. But yeah, I think that if you can fix that up and strengthen that posterior chain, you should be able to launch all the way from your toes through your calf. Use all that stretch, power through your calf into your hamstring. And if you carry that tension in your belly, right, even all the way up into your chest, there's some people say that you should, push your hips forward to engage your hara and roll your shoulders back and down. My problem with that interpretation is it often resolves in this sort of extreme air shape in people's kamae that you sometimes see, because they're so focused on like pushing their hips forward, right, putting their shoulders back. What I've found is quite a helpful way to think of it, you can play with this idea, is you take the natural posture, you can have a bit of a gap between your feet, right, the heel to toe thing. It doesn't have to be like Jodan. But if you've got that foot more under you, you can drop that heel, you can use more of that stretch, right? And as I said, when you launch, you should feel that all the way through, that tension into your belly. But the other thing that should happen is as you cut, your chest almost pushes through forward past your shoulders as you go, right? So the first thing to move is your body and not your sword, right? If that makes sense. And it all starts with that back heel. In order to achieve that, I think you need to bring your back foot closer to your front foot when you're in kamae. But like I said, it doesn't have to be heel to toe, but I would say no wider than the internal width of your shoulders apart, and probably the same front to back, right? So have a play with that idea. I think it'll help to get this sort of explosive launch. Now let's watch the match on and see if this is a factor, right? Because I think you could earn and unlock about a foot worth of extra reach, right? And the attacks would be more explosive. Okay, let's play on and see how this plays out. See how your opponent is kind of making those steps in, those little jabs with his feet, trying to make the opportunities. That's something I would definitely take note of, right? He's trying to now establish control of the match, control the timing. Alright? You're a little bit like rooted on the spot, kind of waiting for him to see what he does. That was close for the Hickeyman, close. Okay, here we go again. Oh, here, what happened there? Right, so he does a Higgyman, he zooms off, and he was in the corner of the Shiai, and you just kind of let him go. Right, the next time that happens, stay with him, keep the pressure there. There's a chance that you could do the technique, the tai, push him out the Shiai, that sort of thing. I'm not saying you have to do that, right, but keep the pressure on, right? If somebody's near the edge of the Shiai, you want to keep the pressure on. Yeah, so I think you kind of let him off the hook there. Okay, here we go. Not a bad attempt for the katate kote, the one-handed kote, right? Not a bad attempt. But I think here it shows, you know, you've kind of swung and missed. You're a bit short. So that's the point I was trying to raise earlier, and it's lacking a little explosiveness. Now, one thing I would say in terms of the hand control, so if we go back to talking about your kamae, right, let's see. Okay. Alright, that's good, that's good. Okay. I think your position of your elbows is something we could look at as well. So you notice how they kind of flare outwards, right? They're sort of like out that sort of angle. I'd also say your left hand is maybe a little on the high side. It's not too bad. It's not as bad as I thought the first time I watched this. When I say bad, I don't mean bad. What I mean is degree of extremity, let's say. Your opponent here, he's got his left hand just above the left eyebrow. Really not much higher than that, okay? Your left hand is like up above the men, yeah? I would be conscious of that because it's causing these left elbows to flare out. And that puts tension in your shoulders, right? And I think you'll see it elsewhere in this match. But you've got this tension in your shoulders, and that, I think, inhibits a bit of your shinai work, right? And if you're tense in the elbow like that, then the wrists tense up, all the angles become very extreme, right? From your wrist to your elbow, from your elbow to your shoulder. So when you're trying to do like the katate kote, the one-handed kote, especially against Jodan player, with a Jodan player, the shinai kind of after a certain point, the gravity helps it and it wants to just come down straight. But against a Jodan player, sorry about that, against a Jodan player you have to be very precise, and it's coming in at an angle like as if you were cutting the yokomen or the sayumen, right, which is that cuts to the head, side of the head, right, like in kirikaishi. So when you're doing this katate kote, you have to come in at that angle, right? So you need that control. You can't just throw it out there and hope for the best. So I think if you pair what we talked about with the footwork and the posture, and maybe bring this left hand down a little, think about where the sky is as well, so it's more centered, less over to the right. Okay. What this will do is it'll free your hands up in a number of ways, but I think you'll get more control, right? The elbow should be more down and towards your opponent, a little bit less flared than that, okay, and just really nice and relaxed. Just let them kind of fall down and forward in a natural position, okay? This is going to free your wrists up and your fingers up to do more, and it's going to ease your shoulders as well. So when you do throw your body into the strike, your shinai is going to want to go where your wrists are telling them to. At the moment your wrists are kind of tied up because your elbows are tied up. Yeah, so have a play with that. But I think that's one of the reasons why you kind of swing and miss here. You're slightly short on this attack, and I think there's one or two attacks following this that are slightly short. And take note of that as well, because I think your opponent is starting to now, you know, at the beginning of the match, you were like kind of meeting him head on, and it's taken him a while to establish his rhythm, and now that he's beginning to watch you and pick up on some of your habits and tendencies, right? Alright, so there's that swing and miss. Okay, use the sort of tsugiashi where you step through an attack. That's okay, it's good for a surprise attack, but it's one of those things as well, like it is pretty common, especially for a Jodan player, because you didn't have that moment of seme before you did it, where you didn't create like tension before you did it, you know, so you just sort of did it out of nowhere, so he kind of saw it coming, right? it's one of those things where you have to be conscious that if it's not a surprise, then it's not a surprise. Okay, so there's a little break here to, I think, check the shinai, maybe adjust the nakayui, which is a little leather tie on the shinai. Okay, we're ready to go again. See, stepping back into Jodan. See there's a sort of swing and miss, right? And it's from the feet. See, before, when you first messaged me, you'd mentioned about worrying about speed of younger players and that sort of thing, and being a bit older and not being able to keep up with them on a speed basis. You're actually quite fast with your hands, so I wouldn't worry about that. It's not an outright speed thing, it's an economy of motion thing, to get this explosiveness, right? So something, you know, like I said, if you take some weight off of that front foot and put some more anchoring on that back foot and bring that back foot underneath your body a bit more, when you drive forward and you've got that tension in your hips and that chest kind of pushing through the shoulders to launch the attack, that explosiveness is going to come and you're going to gain that extra distance, and then you won't have these sort of swinging and missing kind of instances quite so much, right? But remember, your opponent's will be watching this, so watch what he does here now. Semi and pop. Okay, so what he does is he's seen that a couple of times, so now when he's got a good impression of you that if he does the semi step, you'll react to it, you will do something with it, and up till this stage you've been going when he's been going, right? You've been attacking when he's been attacking. So he's banking on the fact that you're going to go for that attack, but he's quite confident that he can control that distance and just keep on the outside of your range, and so he's basically used the kind of attack that you try to use on him at the beginning of the match, which is really interesting. So let's watch it one more time. Okay, watch the step before he strikes. Here, semi, up, down. Okay, so his waza has a beginning, middle, and end. There's that opportunity with the semi, the strike, and the full zanshin. And that's why it was awarded, right? Okay. Something you'll notice is now that he scored the ippon, he's becoming more comfortable to set up his rhythm. Now notice that, right? That's his experience starting to show, okay? So he knows that you tried the nukimen earlier. And so now when he's gone in for that attack, he's purposely ducked down very low so that you can't use that counter attack, right? He's used that same waza on you, and you know it just comes with the experience. Like he knows that when he closes the distance like that, his head is vulnerable, so he makes a strike with full commitment, but then immediately like brings his head right down to make it extremely difficult to hit it. Same it, pop. Yeah. Okay. Right. So there's the second ippon. So remember how I said earlier about this block that you did? Okay. So what's happened is your shinai is like really off to the right and quite flat, like almost parallel to the ground, right? Blocking in itself is not so bad if you're really mobile with your feet, right? So if you'd held that block and you'd done like really sharp, fast footwork to increase the distance and get out of there, yeah, it's not ideal. I know Jodan players are not supposed to retreat and all this, right? But it's the Shiai, okay? You're in there to not concede the ippon, not to lose basically, and to try to win the match. to the best ability that you can. So if you had done this block and you'd be really mobile with your feet, he wouldn't have had the chance for the door, okay, because the moment would have passed too quickly. The way he got you here was, A, he'd seen you block like that before, I think, so he was starting to have a sense that you hold your hands a bit too high as a general theme, especially when you're kind of like close distance or in that middle range of, you're in that sort of kill box for the hikiwaza, right, the cut and going backwards, right? But the main thing I think that gives you away here is your feet change, right? So remember I said, like, if you were fast and dynamic and got out of there, wouldn't have been such a problem. But what actually happens is your concentration drops, right? Because up till now there's been many strikes that you've made, right? And you're probably starting to get a bit tired, both mentally and physically, right? Obviously, he's practicing at this kind of sharp end if he's, looking at squad selection and that sort of thing. So his experience is starting to count here. He can keep his mental composure for longer, and his physical endurance is perhaps a bit better as well. And so what's happened is he's still like fully alert, and at this point, we can get back to that, he sees the hands go up, but he sees you basically just walking backwards, right? So we're coming to it now. Okay. So he keeps the pressure on, and all he's doing is like just staying with you, right? He's just staying with you and watching you. But he sees that his hands go up and the feet change, and it's the feet that give away the fact that your concentration has dropped. So that footwork discipline it's very important. Yep, pop. Okay, and there we go. There we have it. That's the match. Okay, so you said when you sent this in that you were reasonably proud of how it went. Reasonably happy. Maybe that's a better way to say it. Happy with how it went, considering the opponent. And I think you are right to feel that way. I think you, particularly the way you started the match, right, all the way up to that first ippon. Although you didn't get any ippon, the way you handled yourself, because I'm sure you would have known the level of the opponent before you started with him, right? Even if you didn't know, you probably had some sense just from looking at him, right? But you came out the gates with a lot of fiery spirit, and you met him head on, and you actually made it quite tough for him to establish his rhythm early on, right? He couldn't just pick and choose his moments whenever he wanted, and so that's why you ended up with those Ayuchi attacks. Just remember, you want to work on that thing where you're making those semi-steps, those steps forward. They don't have to be big. You've got to play around with this. It just takes experience, but short, sharp ones, maybe sometimes a little deeper. You got to vary it up a bit. Sometimes you need a bit of tension, just not waiting, but just let it hang and cook for a second. Let the pressure build, and then the semi and the strike. Play with this kind of concept. And remember, to capitalize on that, you need this explosiveness that starts all the way from your heel, going through your calf, up into your hamstrings, through into your glutes, and it's all stabilized by the tension in your belly. As I said, as you explode out the gates, the chest kind of like feels like it kind of goes first before your shoulders go, right? So it's like the core of your body is, you're pushing that through yourself as you launch the attack. It's very difficult to describe, but what I want you to do is go and read up about Tame, T-A-M-E. If you pop onto this website called kendoinfo.net, and that was Jeff Salmon Sensei, Kyoshi Nanadan, so Kyoshi 7th Dan. He's got some articles on it, and George McCall over at Kenshi 247. They talk about Tame, and for your progression through 4th Dan and 5th Dan, Tame becomes a very, very important thing. And this seme, this kind of making this, making your own opportunities and controlling the timing and the flow of the patchy, the match. This is going to be an important theme for you going forward. this is the main way in which your opponent was able to defeat you, okay? Was because early on in the match, you came out and you met him head on, and it took him a while to establish this, but once he got going with starting to build his timing and making those clear steps of semi, he started to get reactions out of you, okay? And that's what showed the difference in level of Kendo. Was yours was quite reactionary and his was proactive. But it didn't start that way. You were quite proactive in the beginning of the match. You just didn't have the entire sequence, start, middle, and end, all together, all in one go. And that's why the distance didn't pay off. So it's partly technique, and it's partly this interaction between the two of you. But I think you're right to be happy with how you did. You know, it is a high-level opponent, and I think you showed really well against him. Particularly, you said this is the first time playing Jodan in Shiai, I believe, and definitely I think you said doing the Jodan against Jodan. So I thought it was really fantastic. So well done for that. And thanks very much for sending this video in. You know, it's a great opportunity for us all to kind of study it, and it takes a bit of bravery to commit to doing that sort of thing. You raised another question, so just before I go, I'll address that, which was managing Jodan and Jodan. You know, how should you tackle it? What should the dynamics be of that? There's two main schools of thought. One is you go all in. You do everything Jodan from now on. And you were talking about how you're injured or you have, you know, issues in your legs, and that's one of the reasons why you take Jodan. So you'd be quite justified in doing that. But that would mean you'd be doing your Kihon, your Suburi, your everything that you could that was practical to do in Jodan. Uchikomi Keiko, you know, where they show you the targets. Kakari Keiko, where you just continuous attacking spirit, and this just against the sensei, they like counter-attack you and they make you do the Hikiwaza, and it's like running into a brick wall, right? And you, in your sparring, your Jikeiko, you do all of that in Jodan. You do your gradings in Jodan, you do obviously your Shiai in Jodan. That's one approach. I know many people have taken it and it works okay for them. So yeah, you know, there's nothing wrong with that. That's one way to go. I myself have chosen to do it a different way. So I read in, I think it was Kendo Jodan magazine, but don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure it was, an interview with Chiba Sensei, and he talked about his journey on with Jodan. And in the early days of his Jodan, no one knew he did Jodan. So in the dojo that he taught, he only taught in Jodan, and he only practiced Jodan there. And he would travel to a different sensei to go get lessons on Jodan specifically. And it was only when he won a reasonably reputable Taikai, and I think it was televised, that people sort of cottoned on to, hang on, he's a Jodan player. But he used to do something really interesting, and I've never heard of anyone else doing it. I would check with your sensei or your high grades whether this is a good idea or not in the current day. But the way he used to approach it was, this is early days, remember? So he would do the Shiai from Jodan for the Shotachi. Shotachi is the first point. If he won the first point, then he would take Jodan for Nihome, the second point, or Shobu, the final point, right? Whatever it turned out to be, because obviously you've got to see if you score the next point or not. And I think the reason he did that was not to be arrogant, right? So it was go in as an open book. And then if you get that first point and you think, okay, I think I've got a handle on this situation, and then you would adopt a more advanced kawai. Now, I'm not saying you have to do that, but something interesting to note about Chiba Sensei was he did all his gradings in Jodan, including the Hachidan. Okay, so as far as myself personally, what I do is it depends on who's in the room a lot of times and the occasion. If I'm with a really high level sensei, I'm at a seminar or something like that, and I've got the 7th and 8th dan sensei, I'm not going to take Jodan with them, I'm going to practice Jodan. I still feel I'm a better Kendoka in Jodan, but then I don't have injuries and things like that to worry about, right? So I want to show them my best Kendo. I'm not there to focus on my other Kendo studies, shall we say. I'm just there to do the very, very basic stuff, to try to do it to the highest level that I can with them. If it's in the dojo, right, everyday keiko, then the way I weigh it up is, if I'm preparing for Shiai, then I will maybe do majority practice in Jodan. If I'm preparing for the grading, I'll do majority practice. In fact, it'd pretty much be 100% practice in Jodan. Unless somebody else was preparing for the Shiai and they want the experience against Jodan, then yeah, I'll happily do a keiko with them, or maybe do a half keiko with them in Jodan. But I'm also the coach in my club, so the dynamics of that are a little different. If I've got enough people there and I can split the lesson on just a normal day when I'm not preparing for a big event or grading or something like that, then if I've got plenty of people in armor who've got experience under their belt, they've all got Dan ranks, and the beginners, I'm able to, you know, sort of split the class in two. Then what I would probably do is do, like, depending on the program and where the time allows for it, I would do the first set of each practice. Say it's like men practice, then kote practice. I would do like the first two in Jodan and then take one in Jodan, or if time allows, I might do the same, like 2 each, right? And then rotate next waza type. Just depends on the program. Something else to consider is with your dojo mates is whether or not your practice of Jodan interferes with their kendo or benefits them. So if you've got really beginner level people there, they barely understand what they're doing against Jodan, right? And by you adopting Jodan, are you complicating things further and making it messier for their learning? So that's something to bear in mind. Plus, ultimately, I do think that your Jodan, there's a lot that your Jodan can inform into your Jodan, right? Like I said about these things about feeling tame, right? There's tension in the body, the connection between your opponent and trying to get that explosive launch. You can study all that in Jodan, and it's because you can do it by the textbook. I think it's easier to get it there first and then try to bring it into your Jodan personally. But you know, it's different for different people, and maybe if you've got a dedicated Jodan teacher, maybe you don't need to do that. You know, I don't have that. I have to travel to see people and bounce ideas off of people. So, but in any case, I think both approaches are valid. You just have to do some thinking about, you know, what your priorities are. That's one thing. But I would definitely consult your higher grades that know your kendo. Yeah, your sensei, or as I said, higher grades in your region. You know, people who know you, they've seen you a few times, maybe graded you, that sort of thing. Just have a chat to them and see, you know, what they think. Especially considering you've got the injuries and stuff like that. If the injuries interfere with you being able to do Jodan safely, there's no reason why you shouldn't then just fully adopt Jodan. You know, the basics and fundamentals of Kendo are the same no matter what kamae you're in. So that's why it is really up to you. But personally, I do find value in going both ways. One thing it will help with continuing your practice of Jodan is obviously you'll develop this nice library of techniques that the Jodan players have, right? That counterattacks, kaishi, waza, you know, like catch and return, suriage waza, these kinds of things. You'll get a real good insight into how the more advanced Jodan player thinks and behaves. And if you practice that against a Jodan player, then you can really you can practice your Jodan against somebody taking Jodan. It helps your Jodan, right? Because then when you're on the other side doing your Jodan against Jodan, you're kind of you can understand their mindset and the kinds of things that they want to set up in terms of techniques and timing and distance. So yeah, I do think that there's a benefit to continuing both, and then just a question of prioritizing and management. It's maybe not a one-fits-all thing. Maybe make it more adaptive to what's on your agenda, what's on the horizon. You know, are you competing soon? Are you grading soon? Those sorts of things make a difference. Anyway, I think that's the end of the video now. Hopefully that helped anyone who is higher level than myself certainly, and as Jodan player, please feel free to add things in. It's probably something I missed. Maybe I misphrased something or got something wrong with the video. Feel free to correct me. But you know, our friend here is looking for advice. He's an open book for this sort of thing. Like I said, he volunteered for this, so do feel free to drop a comment and let him know your thoughts. Just remember, it takes a bit of bravery to put yourself in the online domain, so just keep it civil. Right, that's where I'm going to leave it for today. Thanks very much, take care, and goodbye.